Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to ETOUDI 2018. In about 6 days from now, some 6.6 million Cameroonians will decide on who to rule Cameroon for the next 7 years. The only weapon they have at their disposal now is their voters' cards. Some presidential hopefuls, particularly the 8 contenders battling to unseat incumbent Paul Biya, have described the year 2018 as a historic and a year of change. They have been crisscrossing towns and villages across the national territory, wooing voters to elect them come the 7th of October 2018. But is the call for change enough? What solutions are they proposing to the various economic, social and political crises plaguing Cameroon at this point in time? What is the balance sheet of the New Deal regime of President Paul Biya, and what does Paul Biya have to offer after he has been in power for about 35 years? Tonight on ETOUDI 2018, we are going to be joined by some representatives of some opposition political parties and that of the governing CPDM. We are being joined tonight by Mr. Bruno Lombo of the United People for Social Renovation. Mr. Bruno Lombo, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Pleasure mine being here today.
Tonight, you are representing the PU's presidential candidate, Serge Espamatomba. Once again, we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Tonight as well, we have a representative of the Social Democratic Front Party, Barrister Atanga Mbambole. Good evening to you, Barrister. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Mimi. Good evening to my co-panelists, and good evening to our televiewers.
Thank you so much for coming. And we have Sir Mutaga Silvanos Tifu of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement Party, and the former Vice President of PADEC of Jean de Dieu Momo. Sir, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Mimi MEFO. Good evening to Vasero. Good evening to Andre Exama. Good evening to Christian Pinda Ekoka, those who joined the Natural Coalition, and good evening especially to Professor Maurice Kamto, candidate of the Natural Coalition representing the Cameroon Renaissance Movement for ETOUDI 2018.
And just to know that you are part of that coalition joining the CRM presidential candidate, Professor Maurice Kamto, we are equally having supporter of the CPDM, the governing CPDM political party, Barrister Julius Ashu. Good evening to you, Barrister. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, madam. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, televiewers. I'm here for my candidate, President Paul Biya.
Of course, you've always been a supporter of the governing CPDM political party. Before we begin, we're going to go straight away to Mr. Bruno Lombo of the United People for Social Renovation. An incident occurred just few meters away or few kilometers away to the region of Adamawa with regards to the PU's political party. Your bus actually went into flames, and the president of PU's party, Serge Espamatomba, so far described it as an attack on the party, an attack on his personality. Tell us more about that experience. Why do you think that is not an accident?
Yeah, what I should say is that before this incident occurred, here in Douala, we had an attack. We had fire in our offices here in Bonaberi. So this is the second time we are facing such an incident. So before this event of the bus, Serge Espamatomba received threats from people saying that they are going to burn our bus. So when the next day you have such a thing, the bus is burning up, you need to ask yourself the question: are those two elements related, the threat and the fire on the bus? So, but today we don't really mind about the burning of the bus because it's a minor incident. It will not stop us from going forward. And right now the troops are actually in Garoua, where they've done a tour in the town. And yeah, we are confident in what we are unstoppable.
So you had threats few hours or one day before?
One day before.
Did you take enough security dispositions to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Anyway, in our organization, we have a security disposal. But what we have to say is that the government, the state has to ensure the security of all the candidates that are going for the electoral process. Why? Because all those candidates, all the 9 candidates are actually presidential people, so they need to be protected as well as all those who have the means to do so. So it is important to say that all those who are going for the electoral process needs to be protected. Not only those who have the means, but also those who do not have the means to overcome with those kind of things. But it's to say that even as this event that has occurred like this, we are not going to stop. We are going to move forward. We are going to gather our troops. Indeed, here in Douala yesterday, all the troops were gathered to say no to terrorism because all those acts, fire here in the bus, fire in our offices, it's too much. Let's say no to that, and then let's come to better elements on this electoral process.
So Mutaga Sivanos Tifu, just to talk about this issue of security of presidential hopefuls in Cameroon, what is the situation at the CRM? And what were you expecting? Do you have some particular security dispositions that you've put in place?
It's regrettable that what happened to the party of Specialist Paul Matumba really took place. We sympathize with them. Really is something that the government needs to be blamed for it. With us at the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, I think we are doing a lot. You could see for yourself that we didn't collect the 50 million francs that was given by the state, simply because we thought that that money isn't enough to even mobilize guys, pay them for security. So it was like a kind of a mockery. But then with our funds, I think we have recruited security agents that are paid by the party, and they are following the caravan all through the 10 regions of the nation, and they are doing an amazing job.
Now, Barrister Atanga Mbabole, the Social Democratic Front has been touring around Cameroon before campaigns actually started, and even after campaigns officially kicked off across the national territory ahead of the 7th of October 2018. You certainly collected the 15 million francs here we put at your disposal, funds that have so far been rejected by other opposition in Cameroon. Tell us about how much you have to spend on daily basis as far as these campaigns are concerned.
Well, I'll start by saying that since February that we elected our candidate, it was normal that we start putting in place all the measures to have a fruitful presidential election. Our candidate has crisscrossed the nation since February several times, and is currently doing the same during this official campaign period. First of all, to present to Cameroonians what he thinks is best for them, for Cameroon, and his political program, and to prepare for the elections as we've been doing. So it is part of our political duty as a political party to inform Cameroonians what we propose to Cameroonians and what we hope together with Cameroonians we can achieve for ourselves.
So the government, this has been done. Put at their disposal is no problem? No,
I was coming to that. Okay. We have never relied on the funds for campaigns. We have this experience of going to elections, presidential elections since '92, and we know very well that this government will not put at our disposal meaningful funds to be able to carry out a particular campaign. We had other methods of obtaining our funds. We did contributions in-house, and we were not relying on the 15 million francs. However, for the respect of Cameroonians, this is the taxpayers' money. We cannot spit on it. We receive the money because it is Cameroonians' sweat, and the sweat of Cameroonians should contribute to the success of the SDF, which is their political party and which they are working for. So we receive the money. There is no gainsaying about it. We're not relying on any huge sum from the government. We are carrying on our campaigns, and in terms of figures, our campaigns cost more than that per day. So we cannot look
more
at 15.
Than the amount you
exactly, more than that per day. I'm involved in spending. I had to spend more than that today for many things, so I know what I'm talking about.
You mean that at the end of the day, you find yourself spending hundreds of millions of francs?
Billions, please, billions.
Okay, Barrister Achu Julius, about the security of presidential candidates, those that are vying for post of president in Cameroon. Do you think that is a place, as some opposition parties are saying, as some opposition party leaders are saying, is a place of the government to ensure that and guarantee the safety of those vying for post of president in Cameroon?
Mimi, I will start by sympathizing with my brother for what happened to them. And I believe that it was, nobody can be blamed for that. But it happened, so we have to sympathize with that because it's not correct. If there was some way we can help, we we will not hesitate to offer our help to you guys. That said, the principle in Cameroon is that security of every Cameroonian is guaranteed by the state. And if you want extra security, what experience shows is that there's a service in Cameroon for extra security from the state. You have to apply. The government cannot come on its own to provide extra security to you when you don't ask for it. So if you don't know, that's why I say this, we are talking about the force of experience, or the power of experience. If you know that, you know where to go to. You know, this is not the US, where it is stated that when once you become a candidate, they provide you special security. Our laws don't permit that as of date. See, when the laws will permit that may happen, but as of date, if you want special security, apply for it. Because the principle is that the government takes care of the security of every Cameroonian without any discrimination.
Now, today is October 1, marking the independence of Southern Cameroon. So the independence of Southern Cameroon from the United Kingdom, and what some Anglophone leaders and historians have so far described as a mass reunification. This day was marked by gunshots. We saw tension in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon that have been hit by conflict for close to 2 years now. The crisis escalated since 2016 and is yet to see a positive end. We can see the situation on the ground. So far, how can you evaluate government's effort at resolving the Anglophone crisis?
First and foremost, I believe, because you're asking for my opinion, I believe we're in a democracy and everybody has a right to his own opinion. And I don't believe in arm lock, using guns. I believe in dialogue, talking. And what is going on in our two regions, the things which you and me can't help it has happened. We have to live with it and look for solutions as time goes on. The government can only give you what it has.
What has the government been able to do so far?
I'm not the Prime Minister, please.
To resolve the crisis,
So
but you are representing the CPD and political party. And we are talking about some of the political...
I came here to represent a candidate who is backed up by CPDM and many other parties. I'm not the Prime Minister to talk about the government. Don't mix up two things. You have the government, and you have the party, and you have its leader, and you have a candidate. I know I was invited to talk about a candidate, and not about the government. If you want to know anything about the government has a spokesman called Mr. Ishu Chiroma, who's the Minister of Communication. If you want to talk about our candidate, I was sent here to talk about him.
But the head of state has taken series of measures to address the Anglophone crisis. How do we explain that up to now, the situation is still the way it is? We see how Telecom officials, administrative authorities are taking special measures ahead of the 7th of October 2018 presidential election in Cameroon. Ahead of today's October 1, we saw the governors of the two English-speaking regions, local administrative authorities taking special measures. Tell me, what explains the fact that up to now, the situation is still the way it is? Despite the measures put in place so far by the President of the Republic of Cameroon that you are here to represent.
You should understand that when it comes to issues like this, you have a war against two forces that don't even know each other. But you and me at least can identify the official Cameroon army. But I will still believe that you yourself, you can never identify who is the opponent. So it is so difficult to come out with a solution when it comes to such a conflict. So it needs a lot of tact, a lot of diplomacy, and a lot of open-mindedness to solve such an issue. And that's just what the government is doing. Otherwise, there should have been more killings than you can even talk about today. But as I say, when once there's arm lock, it takes a long time for it to be resolved. You can go around Africa, Central African Republic, DRC Congo, Mali, to understand what I'm saying. Those are guys who have been going through such events for the past 20 years. But the country has been going on and living, that notwithstanding. But the government, as I say, I can actually talk for them, but the way I see things happening is in the sense that the government is not going out for an outright war because they don't even know who's on the other side. It might be a simple, innocent citizen. It might be somebody who's been trained. Nobody knows because those guys don't have any identity. Apart of what you see on internet or WhatsApp, where they do communication, it's difficult to find out who they are. They don't have a camp, they don't have a central command, What do you expect? So it's a type of war, hide and seek war, where at times you have skirmishes and no battles.
The question is, how long is this going to last? Barrister Atanga Mbambole, ahead of October 1 today, the government of Cameroon took special security measures in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon, restricting movements of persons. Vehicles were not allowed to move from one subdivision to another. It was not even possible to get into the northwest or the southwest region of Cameroon. Barrister, tell us about this decision by administrative authorities. What is your evaluation? Is that enough?
Yeah,
to resolve the tension in the regions?
We are governed by people who are used to poor tactics, which have nothing to do with the people, but just repression. You see, I'm glad when my big brother talks of security and that the government is there to guarantee security for everybody. But as we are talking, the northwest and the southwest region is being disenfranchised on the basis that they cannot guarantee the security of voters. They've carried voters to vote 60 kilometers away, all at divisional headquarters in polling centers, which is a political, an election apartheid. So we cannot be talking about security and be incapable of guaranteeing the security of those in the northwest and southwest regions. Imagine that people should not move. You know what that costs? And this is just what the secessionists or the separatists are doing. When they have ghost towns on Monday, you also come and give an administrative order that people should not leave their homes, people should not move for 2 days. What you are in effect saying is that you are incapable of guaranteeing the security of citizens. And this has a toll on the people. That's why people are leaving these regions. And you cannot say that the measures put in place for 2 years have been alleviating the sufferings and solving the Anglophone problem. No, it has instead aggravated, because at the beginning there was no will. Right up to now there is no will. And the only thing Cameroonians should do is to flush away the leader of this regime come October 7, so that we can start talking and looking forward for a better Cameroon.
You have talked about delocalizing polling stations, the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon, which are the principal strongholds of the Social Democratic Front Party. Is the party not worried about the possible outcome of the election?
We are worried, but not because it is our stronghold. We are worried because a good number of Cameroonians, at least 1 million registered voters, are disenfranchised. This is why we call it an apartheid. This is something humanly disgusting for a regime to come to that after ruling a people for 36 years, and then you come to organize an election where up to this number of people will not be able to vote, and you yourself, you are doing everything for them not to vote. Because with the insecurity, let me tell you something, when the polling stations were spread out, it would have needed a lot of these guys, amber boys as they call them, to disrupt elections. But once you bring these polling stations to one place, it means you are telling them that we are here, so you can come and attack us here with your few gendarmes that you will post outside. And then you're also telling the population that don't come and vote, because as you come to vote, they will see you and they can go and burn your house, as it has been the case. But if the polling stations were spread out, you cannot find them. For example, in my village, there were our 18 polling stations.
But how secure will the people be?
There will be no security. They are incapable. They are incapable. All they've done is that people will stay at home. They encourage people to stay at home. That's all.
Now, Sir Mutaga Sivanos Tifu, this crisis has been going on for 2 years now. The CRM political party is proposing genuine and inclusive dialogue. What if the desire of the English-speaking population differ from their French-speaking counterparts? Because the CRM presidential candidate, Professor Maurice Kamto, is talking about national dialogue, including Cameroonians in general. What if the views of the English-speaking population, after that said dialogue, differ from their French-speaking counterparts? What if a majority of the English-speaking population decide to secede? What would the CRM president do if you finally take over office and a majority of the English-speaking population decide to secede? What are you going to do about that?
Amy, it is a brain-wrecking question that you've just asked. And if I were to twist and ask that question, it would be difficult for you to answer. But let me answer it from the point of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. The president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Professor Maurice Kamto, said it, I quote, that he knows that the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon came into union with special status, which the system in place has violated it. And if you look at the crisis escalating right up to the present stalemate where we find ourselves, is as a result of the gross negligence of the head of state, who has been minimizing the people. Because if you look at what is happening in 2018, instead of him struggling to go to the northwest region and the southwest region to call for calm, he goes to the northern regions to lobby for voters. You look at it. So the Cameroon Renaissance Movement candidate, Professor Maurice Kamto, said it. That's with firm assurance that if the two English-speaking regions will be asking for restoration, which is, he would not be ready to accept it because he believed that we are in the logics of uniting Africa. You know, if you look at the European France itself, if France wants to come and negotiate for market in Africa, they want to come through the concept of, or the pretext of the European Union. That's a clear indication that united we stand, divided we fall. When we are united, we have a strong bargaining power, rather than when we are divided.
So the CRM is for unity, if we can.
CRM is for unity,
basically.
but then this unity will go with us deciding the form of the state, because the present situation reaching where it is as a result of the form of the state which was violated. If the regime in place had accepted and hold strong to the former regime, which was federalism.
Are you saying that the CRM would go for federal system of government, because it's not really clear as far as the form of the state is concerned?
This is what Professor Maurice Kamto said. He said, come October 7, as Cameroonians all over the 10 regions of Cameroon have been vying, really showing their determination and their commitment, their love for him. If they, in case they honor him to reach at the aim of Cameroon Supreme Magistracy, he will call them for national dialogue, and he will go through a referendum. If they vote, in it whatever form of state they want,
he's going to adopt.
He's going to adopt
now,
it.
Mr. Bruno Lombo of Pew's political party, Serge Spamatomba, is proposing decentralization, effective decentralization. Tell us how it can possibly solve this problem.
Okay. According to Pew's party with Serge Spamatomba, we've opted for decentralization, the real decentralization, because what is being done today is kind of decentralization which is not really relevant for what population that are living today. So we are talking about decentralization because we want to give to all localities the possibility and the ability to think and react for their own development. Because what is going on in Northwest and Southwest today, it's the manifestation of social injustice. That's it. That's the word, of social injustice. Because you cannot imagine that people are living in a place and don't have minor security. They don't have food. They don't have roads. Because you know that in Southwest and Northwest, people suffer a lot from roads. They don't have means of communication. So the manifestation of that is the total insecurity, the total social insecurity people are living there. That's why we want to put in place decentralization to enable all those people to think on their own, to think their development, and to bring in income for themselves. That's why we opted for decentralization. But let me come back to something that has been said here for the Anglophone crisis. At the time, before the escalation of this crisis last year, we in the Pews, we suggested during the press release some proposal to normally come out from this crisis. What we said is, first point, Mr. Biya should organize fair and free elections and should not present and should not run for those elections. Why? Because if we state that Mr. Biya is the problem, having him apart would somehow bring down the tension in the Northwest and Southwest region in order to us to bring all the parties together and talk around the table. That's the first suggestion we made at the time. The second suggestion was, as we are going for this election, we need to create and put in place an intermediary force composed of people of influence. And at the time, we talked about Kazina Christian Tumi, we talked about His Highness Sokuju, we talked about the Takumbung of the Northwest. Those are people of influence that could bring all the population together around the table. Thank God today we have the All Anglophone Conference that is going to hold in November. And those are exactly what the Pews have been suggesting all this time. So you see that opposition party, rather than what is being said all the time, that they don't have anything to suggest, they don't have proposition. Those are propositions that were made before the crisis escalated, and now we are coming back to those.
Now, for the opposition political party to take over, you have to be able to convince Cameroonians with their economic, political, and social programs that you are capable of ruling the country. Let us begin with the economic program of the Pew's political party. Okay. We begin right with employment. We know about the rate of underemployment in Cameroon, which is put at 75.8%. The figures were established by the Ministry of Employment and Vocational Training. It should be noted that that was in 2016. Yeah. What is the Pew's party going to be doing to solve this problem of underemployment in Cameroon?
Yeah, you've just said it. Over 80% of Cameroonians are underemployed, meaning that to improve our economy, we need to bring out all those companies that are still working on the background into the face of the world. What are we intending to do? Seyeson Matumba said that we are going to create 5 million employments within 5 years. Now, how are we going to do that? The first thing is to bring all those who are in the informal sector to the formal sector by initiating a social communication, which we tell them that, okay, you need to come to this, put in place a system in which all these organizations are going to match. How are we going to do that? The first thing is to say that to have 1 million enterprises is not an easy task. But we have to know that Cameroonians are great entrepreneurs, and Cameroonians are willing to create wealth. So we are going to enhance those people, encourage them to create enterprises in the formal sector. We are going to tell them, okay, as you have created your enterprises, now you need to recruit 5 Cameroonians, because you know that 300,000 graduated from universities are knocking at the door of employment today in Cameroon.
For them to accept your conditions, there are certain benefits that they have to acquire from the government of Cameroon to be able to accept the proposals.
Okay, just come and recruit.
What are you going to be putting in place?
The first measure
to favor some of these enterprises?
We are going to put in place a taxation system. You know that today we pay what we call in French la taxe sur l'impôt sur société, taxes on enterprises. So we're going to say, at this moment, as I'm talking like this, it is around 30%. We are going to reduce that rate within 3 years up to 10% for those companies to cope. Now you are going to ask me the question, how are you going to, when you reduce the taxes, how are you going to collect in the other hand? It's simple. Those 5 employees that are going to be recruited are now taxpayers. So you give with the first hand, and then you collect at the second hand. So it's very simple. We can apply this in our country, and we should also say that for all the big countries like Germany, like Japan, those economies are supported by SMEs and SMIs. So they are the one creating wealth in the country. The government sector cannot provide enough recruitment, cannot provide enough employment for all the Cameroonians. That's why we need to encourage entrepreneurship. We need to gather them, we need to guide them, we need to encourage them, and then make them develop themselves with what.
Of course, Barrister Atanga Mbambola is talking about the small and medium-sized enterprises and how they can create jobs if their capacities are reinforced by the government. We have hundreds or thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises. Others are coming up on daily basis, but facts and figures presented by economic experts in Cameroon have made us to understand that a good number of them would barely survive after 5 years of existence. Tell us what you do to reinforce the capacity of small and medium-sized enterprises in Cameroon.
Yes, thank you. I beg to take us back a bit. We discuss an issue here without having our candidate's contribution, that of the Anglophone crisis, the insecurity, and what we suggest. You see, our candidate, Joshua Osei, says that he will solve this crisis within the first 100 days. And the first few days, he will first of all declare the war stopped in this region, call back the military, because this war was declared, and we cannot claim today that people are fighting or just causing terrorism. A war was declared on the people, and you don't expect them to sit and look back at you. So, first of all, stopping this war, and then going to meet these people, wherever they are, to dialogue with them. For the victims who are far and near, for them to come back, for us to have a proper reconciliation conference and a reparation conference, plans for that. And the only person who can best do this will only be a person who has been suffering and living this crisis, this problem, all through his life, because you will be in it, not away from it. So that is what Joshua Osei has proposed, and this can be done within 100 days, the first 100 days of his presidency. Now, coming to your question on the economy, we cannot also discuss the economy without discussing the political structure, because in the SDF's political structure and that proposed by Joshua Osei, these solutions are already there. Once you have a federal system, you will find the solution to many of our problems. We have talked about federalism by and large, but I wish to take it from another angle, that as a people, we have all sorts of problems in Cameroon. No Cameroonian will say we are fine as a people. Another way of looking at federalism is that we'll put all these our problems on the table and tell ourselves that you, at your level, you can do this, you, at your level, you can do this, with the full powers, knowing fully well that what you put in, you are the primary beneficiary. You will see that things will take off. Government structures, federal states will have what they have to do, and there will be checks and balances. You have to stimulate your local economy.
It's going to be beneficial.
Exactly, I'm coming to that. Exactly, I just use the phrase stimulate your own local economy. Take every region. We said we are proposing a 10-state federation because we really live in a 10-region country where we don't have any problems with the territorial delimitations of our regions. So, in the event where we have a 10-state federalism, each state will also have local economies that will generate, that we promote. For example, the East, we have what we call local mining there. In the Northwest, agriculture. Southwest, the same thing. So these people and all these companies, with the government encouraging them with tax incentives to set up companies in this area so that we do not look at our big towns as the only places where we can migrate to. So just imagine that companies can operate freely all over the national territory, wherein you have state governments with state assemblies doing the checks and balances. Small and medium-sized enterprises will thrive, and they will not be failing after every 5 years, because we have the manpower, we have the resources, but we just need the canalization. So this must be done with a form of state, and people having a lot of latitude to manage their own affairs at their own level.
How different is that from effective decentralization, Barrister?
Effective decentralization is different from federalism in the sense that the man at the center still holds a lot of powers and tells you what to do. But with federalism, let me use another way of explaining federalism. When we talk of incomes, Joshua Osei proposes at least 30 billion francs from the federal government to every state a year. That is 30 billion. 1 billion francs from the federal government to every council a year, at least. 10 billion francs from the federal government to every state to promote the employment of young people. So imagine, let's leave the councils. A state which is short of at least 40 billion. That is the minimum, because some, depending on the incomes that we have, and from the different states, we have incomes that the percentages that must remain in the state, and those that go to the federal government and to be shared, which means that every state, if you have 40 billion francs, in 5 years, you can see what 200 billion francs have done in a particular state.
Barrister Ashu Julius, some 18 years ago in Cameroon, the National Employment Fund was created to help jobless Cameroonian youths find jobs in companies and in some other on some other institutions across the national territory. But the unemployment figures still stand at 4.3%. Those are official figures in Cameroon. How do you explain that? We see on yearly basis when the head of state is delivering his annual speech to Cameroonians, he's talking about the creation of hundreds of thousands of jobs created by the government throughout the year. How do we explain that despite the existence of the National Employment Fund that has been existing for more than one decade now, there is still high rate of unemployment in Cameroon.
Mimi, you just said it's 4.3%, right? If it has not changed that much, you have to calculate it with the growth of the population too. So as the population is increasing, if we can just stay all at 4.3%, it's not very bad. But you see, what people don't understand is that there's a lot of job creation going on in Cameroon. I come from Santa, please. There's no young man there who doesn't have a farm. I can tell you, they are breaking even. Go to Boya, where you have a computer center, like Silicon Valley. If you know what those guys are doing and how much money they're making, you can't believe it. But you see, Cameroon has a system where many people don't like to understand how it functions. That's why they usually go astray. You cannot allocate money, for example, to go send to a council without there being a budget, without there being a sit-up. The council says, this is what we need, this is what I need, this is what I need. And then to determine the figure that is going to be sent per council or per region or anywhere. So there needs to be a budget which is studied first of all and presented. Cameroon is a country whereby we have one of the best tax policies in the sense that it is you who goes and declare your taxes. Nobody comes and taxes you automatically unless you fail to come and declare. So you are the one who goes towards the tax office to say, look, I made this profit, this amount this year, or I lost this amount this year, and I want to do my tax declaration so that whatever I have to pay, I will pay.
So you are satisfied with the tax system?
So the way the system is, to me, it's normal. And for a point of correction, company tax in Cameroon is 1.1%. So you can imagine, 1.1%. What you're talking is profit tax, which is about 35%, which is different. When you make a profit, it's normal that the government taxes you. But you are the one who comes towards the government to make that declaration. So you see, we have a system which is very, that makes everything to be stable. And so that we don't feel it until you know about it.
Barrister, you've talked about youth being employed in Santa,
yes,
that are into farming.
Yes.
You've talked about youths in Silicon Valley, in Boya, southwest region of Cameroon. Tell us what the government is doing to assist some of these youths who are engaged in agriculture. We know that some few months back, the government of Cameroon was calling on youths to indulge or engage themselves in agriculture, and that agriculture can be an employment tool for Cameroonian youth. Yes, a catalyst for Cameroonian youth. Tell us what the government of Cameroon has done to accompany some of these youths engaged in agriculture. Tell us what the government has been able to do to accompany some of these youths that are at Silicon Valley in Boya.
You know, when it comes to have you ever heard that in Boya there's been a tax drive to discourage people from doing whatever they're doing? No, because most of the activities which those young guys are carrying out, they are creating jobs at the level internet, which is what we call it is
virtual.
Yeah, it's virtual. So you know, as of date, our tax system has not involved the usage of virtual technology.
So that is government's assistance.
That's one.
When we saw a good number of them almost out of business for close to 100 days when internet was cut off in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon. How is that assisting some of these youths
most of them
Boya, at Silicon Valley?
They bypass that system by using what we call VPN. It's something new that you and me will still don't understand.
I'm not new into
many
that.
of them bypass the system. So you said there were internet cuts, but some of them were using it because internet cut. The Cameroon government doesn't have that capacity.
That is to say, has no effect.
Please, you don't want me to talk again.
No, Barrister, go ahead. You have the floor.
Cameroon government doesn't, as of date, the technology system, the computer system in Cameroon was not capable of actually blocking the internet, as people say, because of the way around it. And those guys were capable of going around it. But what is disturbing them more now is this conflict, this crisis, where they can't operate any longer. I know in the Northwest there's Mideno that provides seeds, that provides chicks, that provides fertilizer, to encourage the farmers to do their farming with all the facilities that you can.
Can you tell us in terms of statistics the number of farmers that Medino has been able to help so far?
No, I don't have a council.
You don't. Now,
I don't work with me.
Sir Mutaga Sivano Stifa of the CRM political party, it should be noted that the public service in Cameroon cannot employ up to 1/4 of the workforce in the country. What is the CRM political party going to be doing to provide jobs to the millions of jobless Cameroonians today in Cameroon?
Maybe before I come to that, when I hear my learned panelist, Brasa Julius said the companies have to declare their profits and all the like to the state and whatsoever it is before they tax them and all the like. That is the system that encourages corruption. If you look at what is happening, you find that Cameroon is one of the countries in the world that is the only country in the world that the rich continue getting rich at the expense of the poor. I remember one man said in America, if the few who are rich cannot help the men who are poor, they cannot save they themselves, the few that are rich. Now, if you come with us of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, I want to still make this crystal clear. Don't forget that Cameroon is a third world nation, though we are striving for emergence in 2035. The agricultural sector, if you get the number of people that CDC employs, you know that it's more than what civil service employs in our country today. CDC alone cannot employ. We have smallholder schemes and not alike. Farm to market roads are lacking. There are many of our youths that have just graduated from university. They would love to get themselves involved in agriculture. But how would they evacuate the products to the market?
Tell us what the CRM is going to
those
be
are
doing
the
to
questions.
solve this problem of unemployment.
So like
Concretely, how
like
many jobs
saying,
are you going to be creating during your first mandate?
Like I was saying, the president of the Cameroon Renaissance movement said it clearly that per mandate, at least if it's small, a total of 55,000 jobs should be created.
In 7 euros?
That's per year.
Per year.
Per year. If it's small, and he makes it clear, it's created at all levels. First of all, we talk of doing what? Professionalizing education. When you professionalize education, you find that youth can auto-employ themselves, thereby relieving the government of the stress. When we talk about employment, it's not only the government employing, but the government can assist the youth to create jobs for themselves. We talk of giving that access to youth to be trained as experts, especially those that have acquired a certain level of formal education, and even those that have not been to school. Don't forget that there are school dropouts who are moving the streets. Those that are the pickpockets in the road, in the street, and all the like. You need to bring them. It's the job of the state to identify them through specialized institutions, social institutions.
Tell us about those institutions that the CRM was going to draw inspiration from and get you trained. So
there hasn't been any institution in Cameroon that we can draw inspiration from.
The domains of job creations that you are going to put in place.
That is exactly what I'm talking of. We have carpentry. We have building and construction. Those are basic things that we can talk of. Are you getting what I'm saying? With this, you need to train the youths. When you give them the training, and then you provide them the material, not the finances, and there is follow-up, you find that this youth will gradually get themselves employed.
That is in the technical educational system.
Technical educational system. And then we come back again, I talk of professionalizing the youth. There's a kind of professional education that we may get, and then which does not facilitate us having jobs. Take, for example, we have accountants that have graduated from universities. Are the financial institutions enough to employ them? Does it mean that if you acquire education as accountant and there is no financial institution for you to get a job, you cannot help yourself out? When you take an accountant that has just graduated from university and you train that accountant, let's take, for example, into let's say hotellery. Are you getting what I'm saying? You facilitate buy the equipment, the baking equipment for the person to bake bread and all the like. The person that has done that can employ other persons and will manage the finances well because he or she has done the education. The person can be now the accountant of his own enterprise through the help of the state, instead of waiting for another person to employ it. Because these youths are willing to get themselves employed, but who is there to catalyze their employment? Now, let me come back to you. We are talking of many youths leaving the rural areas and coming into the city because that's one of the causes of employment. There is job there. We talk about agriculture. Many youths will be better employed if they stay in their towns, produce those crops that they can first of all feed themselves. Because if you look at in the city, we are talking of youth who can barely feed themselves with 500 francs a day. But there is food in their villages because the soil does not deceive. But they think that they are push factors. They are pushed out of the village by what? The pull factors in the town. You have electricity, potable water, and all the like recreational facilities. So
you're going to provide electricity.
These things will be provided in the rural areas,
keep the people
so
in
that
their villages.
With the farm to market roads, the youths can get themselves employed, develop their own environment. I can tell you, last time when I visited the southwest region, that is around Equinoxe, my 10, you need to see the way those cocoa boys are doing. They are willing. Some of them go right far into the bushes to clear the farms and cultivate cocoa. But then, when it comes to evacuating the cocoa to the market, you find that it's difficult. They spend days, and sometimes before the cocoa is even brought home, when it has been dried in the forest, you find that rains disrupt it on the way, especially when it rains. And you know, with the muddy road and all the like. And then, sometimes you look at the channels to which they sell this cocoa through. They end up being taken by dubious men.
Those are some of the difficulties of farmers or the agricultural sector in Cameroon. Mr. Bruno Lumbo, just to find out from you, in 2011, the head of state who was in a Bolova South region of Cameroon announced the putting in place of the second agriculture or second generation agriculture. Several years after that announcement by the head of state, the agricultural sector in Cameroon is still to have a new facelift, as I can put it. What is the People's Party going to be doing to revamp the agricultural sector in Cameroon?
You've just said it, Mimi. Mr. Biya announced many things, excuse me, but nothing has been done yet. So what Serge Matomba is actually suggesting and proposing to the Cameroonian. You know, in Cameroon today, we have something like 80 centers and 24 agricultural schools. We intend to bring that number to 40 so that we should have 120 agricultural institutions in our country. That's the first step. The second step is that every year we train 50 youth in each of those institutions. If you multiply 50 by 120, you have 6,000 youths actually farmers at that moment, actually trained farmers at that moment. Now, what is allocated for them at this moment as I'm talking like this, each school has 100 hectares on which they can actually implement what they have been told in school. What we are going to do is, after training, we give 1 hectare per youth to develop cash crop. Immediately you have total producers on the field. That is to say that we are going to solve 2 major problems. The first problem is the unemployment problem, because there is still to be done on that field. And the second issue we are going to solve is the food security, because you know that Cameroon is not that insecurity. We're not in a substantial food security, because today people are still hungry in some villages because they don't have all the means to produce what they want to produce. Those are the measures that we are going to implement.
That is what the people will have to consume.
That's it.
What about the ones or agricultural products that will have to raise income into the Cameroonian economy?
First of all, what I'm talking about, even these measures are going to raise income, because for 600 hectares Can you imagine what you can produce from that? You will not even be able to consume all what you've produced locally. So the consequence is that you are going to try to export actually the overproduction you have. So this is the first point. Now, by accompanying all these people, by guiding them, we need to focus on how to transform. That's where we go to industrialization. We need to focus now on industrialization, in order to say that, yes, we are going to produce. The next step is how are we going to sell what we produce. It is very, very important. And that's where another element comes in, communication element. That's roads. How are we going to construct roads to enable those people producing cash crops in villages to bring them out? What we should say is that today we need to raise up a partnership, private sector and public sector partnership. That's what Serge Matomba is talking about. According to him, we need to bring in investors in Cameroon in order to say, okay, we have this road to construct. You construct the road on your own means, and then we discuss now on how you come back to your benefits. It's by either putting in place 1-2 gates, people to pay when they pass, and then at that moment, the company that will be able to construct the road will also be the one to repair the road whenever there is a problem there. So you see that the country will be doubly benefiting from that situation, because the road are always going to be on the right state, and then the company as well is gaining, and now even the state is going to gain, because there is a rate that has to be
and how much
shared.
is the state going to be investing in the agricultural sector in Cameroon in terms of funds that you are going to inject in the agricultural sector?
In terms of funds, you know that to talk about agriculture, you first need to talk about lands. Now, actually, as we are talking like this, measures are in place, but they are not really implemented on the field. We are not going to invent anything. We are just going to put in place a management system to enable those different schools and institutions to better manage what they have to manage. So we are not going to create something new.
You're not going to set aside a particular budget for that.
But what is important to say is that the particular budget will not be used only for farming. It is for industrialization and help those people
in general. Now, Barrister Atanga Mbambole, the Social Democratic Front, has put in place a land policy to help Cameroonians have access to land to boost the agricultural sector in Cameroon. But is that going to be enough to boost this sector, which is a backbone of the Cameroonian economy? Because we know what the agricultural sector can bring to an economy. We know that the agricultural sector has been epileptic, as many economic experts have put it in the past years. There is need for the sector to be revamped. What are you going to do to revamp this sector? Is it just going to end at the level of land policy?
No. Agriculture forms part of the Joshua Osi's program. In fact, a lot of emphasis is laid on agriculture. If you have to read the close to 100 pages that we have as a political program on our website, www.oc2018.com, you'll see that a lot of emphasis is laid on agriculture. One, we are in the tropics, so we cannot joke with agriculture. It remains the bread basket of this nation. It remains the employment that is waiting for everybody. But then the government needs to play the enabling role so that this sector triumphs. You see, when we're talking about employment, unemployment, we are so unemployed that the jobs that we have today are motor taxi riders and what we call call box ladies.
Which does not add
not because they cannot stay in the villages and engage into effective agriculture, but because there is no enabling environment. They are chased out of the villages because of the hardships, no farm to market roads, like Bruno rightly said. All this, the SDF and Joshua OC, what we propose is this, that we are going to raise the livelihood of Cameroonians. Not struggling to bring down the standard of living, but to raise their livelihood. Laws are there for it. That is why we talk of increasing the minimum guaranteed wage to 160,000 francs in 5 years. That's why we talk of doubling the salaries of civil servants in 5 years. When we say this, people think that it is strange, but we remind them that in 1993, 1994, even when we double the salaries, most salaries will not even get to the level of 1993, 1994. So these are measures that will stimulate growth, stimulate, first of all, consumption. And then once there's consumption, there must be production. And once there's production, there must be growth. The economy will definitely grow because the entrepreneurs will have more to produce. And then once this money is turned and we have enough money to support the economy, we now go back to our formula I said at the beginning, that of federalism, because all these problems of farm to market roads, all these problems how products will be taken care, local agriculture, agricultural schools, these are things that have to be done by state governments. We only give them funds and supervise. So much so that the funds will not be enough. But people in every locality, once they know that if they have to contribute, just like this idea of PTA, which has been copied and is nationwide. It started in the Anglophone regions. Why? Because Anglophone parents will realize that whatever resources the school has cannot be enough, and then they come in because they know that their children will be the primary beneficiaries of that. It will happen with roads. It will happen with hospitals. It will happen with schools. It will happen with the agri schools that we have. It will happen with the agri businesses that will be created, and the government will fund them. I earlier said that $1 billion.
How much are you going to be investing in the agricultural sector?
I cannot give figures because we need, first of all, to have this money as income. What I can say for sure is that this money will be given to the states. You know what you best do. For example, I told you of 10 billion francs every year to every state to encourage youth employment. They can use it for agriculture. They can use it to train. They can use it maybe to develop roads and what have you. So this would depend now on the particular.
Where are you going to get the 10 billion when it is even above?
No, see, when I hear that question,
it is above the state budget, annual state budget in the country.
No. The annual state budget is around 4,500, and it will likely go to 5,000 this year. It keeps increasing. When we talk of money, Cameroonians are afraid. What we will simply do is that we will revise the channels of our current expenditure. That is all. We are not saying that we are going to increase budgets. No. Money that we use wrongly in our budgetary heads, for example, miscellaneous money coming to the civil service to double the salary of civil servants, to increase it at a rate of 20% every year. If we take just the money for miscellaneous expenses, money for bonuses, which have been made for a few civil servants, so that these civil servants now work or connive to remain there and never go, to benefit from that money, and to the detriment of the majority who are working for this country. If you take that money, you can double their salary. And we come to understand that in 1993-94, salaries were cut not because we had the money, because we wanted to pauperize a nation so that we keep on following them and begging in the CPDM to perpetuate a reign. Another reign has taken us to where we are 2.5 decades away. So what I want to add is that the SDF has a clear policy on the economy, people-centered. And through the federalism that we wish to implement, people will solve their problems as they have. And you know that you are the person to benefit from whatever solution, from whatever contributions you make, many things will move.
Now, Barrister Julius, I should tell us what the CPDM presidential candidate is going to be doing to boost the agricultural sector in Cameroon. Do you have a plan of action?
We've told you that we are in for continuity because the action plan that has been put in place is working. In the northwest, we have Mideno. In the southwest, we have Soweto. Let me tell you something that you don't know. Do you know that the richest persons in Cameroon earn their riches from agriculture? Check it out. Those who deal in cocoa and coffee, those who deal in cotton, those who deal in dairy products, those who deal in cash crops which are exported to Gabon and Angola, they're the richest Cameroonians because they depend on agriculture. So they know the secret that many people don't know. That is the only sector that will never tell you a lie. But you should understand that from all what we're hearing. CPDM, the President Biya, likes to treat the issue at a macro level. All we're talking is micro. what to do day-to-day, what to do with cocoyams and cocoa and coffee and whatever. But you have to understand that to succeed in all of that, the first thing is you handle the macro aspect like having energy. If you see the amount of dams which are being built now in Cameroon, the main issue is to boost agriculture and industrialization. Because you will make more money in Cameroon if you can succeed to transform an agricultural product before exporting or before putting it into the market. So you cannot do industrialization if you don't have energy. That's why you see President Biya has put in a system where they're building lots of dams all over the country to make sure that water is controlled for that purpose. And you can supply the electricity, energy for us to be capable of managing our farms.
Tell us about the growth and employment strategy paper that was supposed to help attain the emergence vision by 2035. The growth and employment strategy paper that was put in place in 2009. We are just barely few months to the end of the first phase of that project that was put in place in 2009. Like I indicated, it was supposed to solve some of these problems in the agricultural system, the problem of unemployment, the problem of bad roads across the national territory. How can you evaluate the implementation of this first phase of the growth and employment strategy paper?
When President Biya came out with Grand Realization, what we call
Great
when it came with that project, I like to put it in French because many people understand. Grand Realization. That means to attain that 2035 goal, we have to handle the macro aspects of it. You don't go to the micro, you go handle the macro, which the first thing, as I say, is energy. The second thing is communication. Cameroon has the best communication system in Central Africa, even with Nigeria inclusive, because when it comes to telephoning, when it comes to data processing, when it comes to exchange of information, Cameroon has a better. Everybody likes to base their head offices in Cameroon. So if the atmosphere is good enough for industrialization, it's going to attract investors. And when investors are attracted to come to Cameroon to do business, they're going to create employment. But we see one thing President Biya wants is that youths should remove this idea of always wanting to work for somebody. They themselves should start thinking of how to create employment themselves, for themselves first. Because if you create employment for yourself, you are going to create employment for a second person.
You talked about Cameroon attracting investors.
Yes.
Who are comfortable about the system, the communication and transport system in Cameroon. Now, the Minister of Public Works in the country some few years back indicated that 77% of roads in the country are in deplorable state. Is that favorable enough to foreign investors when you look at the state of roads, the roads that are linking the center region to the west region, the center to the littoral region of Cameroon, and to the east region and other regions of Cameroon?
You should understand that everything which is material has a tendency of deteriorating at every given point in time. If it deteriorates, all we have to do is to make sure we repair it. But you're just limiting yourself to transport. What of telecommunication? What of energy? You now notice that we now have better energy system than ever before.
Now, I wanted to know what the CPD and presidential candidate you're defending has been able to do to boost the transport system in Cameroon, the route networks in Cameroon.
No, you've seen there are so many roadworks going on in the country presently. If you noticed it, there's the Gaoundé Garoua. They are struggling to build another from A road from Yaoundé to Douala. They are struggling to ameliorate the road system from Yaoundé going to the western region and so on and so forth. It's been done. But you see, those things come to with the package that the government can provide. If no mixing words, the petrol crisis affected every country, including Cameroon. So everything had to go at a slower pace because at one point in time, our economy was beginning dependent on petrol, the process from petroleum products. But you see, as the prices dropped, it affected the economy, which is normal that the Cameroon should cut down on its expenditure, which is what the government has been talking
So
to do.
what is the government doing to cut its expenses, its expenditure, like you said?
It means that as a package,
Concretely,
as
what is the
what in the
government
pocket
doing?
is small, we can only do what we have in the pocket. We cannot make
There should be
magic.
measures put in place, like reducing the amount of the travels of government officials abroad. And what is the government doing concretely to cut expenditure, like you earlier
What I'm
indicated?
saying, well, yes, the first thing is that you cannot spend if you don't have. So what we have in the pocket is what we spend. So the government is making sure that the expenditure is commensurate to what we have in our pockets. I don't want to put that as a strategy, but it's automatic. If you don't have the money, you can't spend it. You can spend it only when you have the money. As a pocket, the amount of money in the pocket, the size reduced, everything got reduced in Cameroon. Everybody has noticed that. And that's why we're feeling it. And I'm sure, as I say, it's due to the fall of the prices of petroleum products, which at one point in time we're dependent upon.
Barrister Atanga Mbambole, before I come to Sir Mutaga, I would first of all find out from you about the priorities of the Social Democratic Front as far as improving on the road network system in Cameroon is concerned. Facts and figures from the Public Works Ministry have indicated that the worst roads that we have in Cameroon, we have first of all the western region of Cameroon, seconded by the east region. We equally have bad roads in the far north region of Cameroon, the east, the south, the littoral center, and then the northwest and the southwest regions of the country. What is going to be the priority of the Social Democratic Front as far as improving road networks in Cameroon is concerned?
Yes, in the Joshua Osei's program, there are about 6 pages on roads, the different road networks from the north to the south, east to the west, which will be tarred within 5 years. And revenue for this will be obtained largely from Cameroonians. You know, once the governed are not in harmony with the government, the spirit is not there. People don't pay taxes. You only force them to pay what they can pay. But if people willingly pay their taxes because they're satisfied with their government, we will have this money. And then second, we don't understand why the cost to construct a kilometer of road is always very high here. Meanwhile, in other terrains, other countries with relatively difficult terrains, we don't have that kind of cost because people embezzle here. This goes back to managing your resources. If states are to manage their resources, they will not embezzle they will embezzle at the central government. So these roads are a priority. There are roads which can be constructed in communities. The communities themselves can construct them. I take the case of this bridge. The amount we hear that has been put on this second bridge, there are 3 or 4 entrepreneurs in Cameroon here united, they can construct that bridge. But why won't they do it? Because they don't have any faith in this government. They don't trust this government. That is it. But in a government where people believe in it, they will come up and do that, and we will do what we call build, operate, and transfer. Wherein Cameroonians, nationals, before those from abroad, where we will not go and indebt ourselves to the tune of billions, when we don't even know when our children's children will ever pay. Cameroonians can do that. Because if you see people building mammoth mansions at every junction, every road corner, that is money. If they were sure of the government, they could put in roads, and it will help everybody. So the SDS policy on roads and Joshua Osei's policy on roads is that this will be participatory. The government will invest in it. Nationals will be called to invest in them, and then those which are major, we can have foreign partners who will come in, not to exploit us, but to build, operate, and transfer.
Now, what is the CRM presidential candidate if you are elected, or Professor Maurice Kamto is actually elected on the 7th of October? What are you going to do to improve on the situation of bad roads across the national territory?
Maybe before I come to that, I'm really sad a bit because I think you give a lot of time to the CPDM candidate to talk than do you give to the Cameroon Renaissance
But he's
movement.
alone. We have
But the Cameroon
opposition.
Renaissance movement is alone. You are supposed to give them the same time.
Certainly, go
You
ahead.
wouldn't
have
give
the
time.
floor.
You wouldn't give time to somebody to be telling me of the project of a government or a system in place that before concourse, the list of names are published. Those who are dealt, they are first in a concourse. You don't give me give time to somebody to tell me the CPDM regime that you get. We are talking of reducing the expenditure of the state, and then the president of the republic is buying a car that costs 400 million francs. You see the car he bought, the caravan for campaign and all the like is worth hundreds of millions. Why people are starving? You will be giving time to somebody to talk when the roads are dilapidated everywhere, living from just we're in Douala to live from Ndokoti to what they call the general hospital. You take hundreds of hours to reach there. You wouldn't be giving time to somebody to talk in a town where people lack just water to drink. Now let's come back to your question again. In fact, I'm really saddened when we come to this. This is time for campaign. Sometimes when those questions are really twisted and maybe I think that they are teleguided, it doesn't allow us to express ourselves. So let me come back
It's
again.
a complex.
It's not a complex.
But he's representing the CPDM presidential
but you give him a
candidate.
lot of time. In a way, I'm not.
But you have the floor and you're
Okay.
wasting your time,
I'm not
sir.
wasting my time, please. Like I said, your question again, please.
I was talking about
Yes, because
I was talking about what
Yes,
the
yes,
Cameroon
let's go
Renaissance
back.
Movement
Yeah.
Party is going to do to improve. You are talking about bad roads
I talk about bad
from
roads
Aqua
and-
to the
Yes.
general hospital
Okay,
here in the
we-
economic
we-
capital
we-
Douala.
yes,
What
yes.
are you going to do in general to improve the road
Yeah.
network system in Cameroon?
I'm really saddened again when you talk of roads. I look at the road Baba to reach Bamenda and all the like. The number of accidents I've reached there. The last time I went to Bamenda, my bulldogs almost got peeled. Now coming back to what the Cameroon Renaissance Movement is thinking of doing, you can imagine it that most of the contracts that are awarded to public agents who are members of the Cameroon, they call it what, the CPDM. When they are not accountable. Most of these guys, they twist money, and you look at it, the issue with bad roads in our country is not that the state does not allocate funds for it. It's because most of these guys that they locate funds for roads to be constructed, the contracts are given to CPDM people. And whenever the law wants to follow them to pursue them up for embezzlement, you find that the head of state who is at
So what is the CRM going
I am
to
coming
do
back. I am
to
coming
ensure
back.
that transparency?
I am coming
to
back.
ensure that there's transparency when there
That
is
is
a project to
exactly.
execute,
That is
like
exactly.
the construction
Now,
of roads.
we come back. Article 66, which says everybody must declare his or her wealth, especially his assets, when he takes a post of responsibility, has to be put in place. Because most of these contractors, I tell you, they are public agents. They are people who work within the administration. If they declare that word, then if they give you a contract and they see that you have amassed wealth, which they don't know the source of it, they begin to think of it. And then one thing we want to do is that we are going to encourage our local contractors using the funds of the state, but with a system that does effective follow-up. Because most of the things that happen in our nation, especially when it has to do with punishing these people, is that the laws are written, the contracts are given, but there are people who, the people go down to the road, they check it, and they don't come back to give accountability to the state. Forget, if the argument is weak, I want to still come back to you to tell you something. Permit me say it. A man of 86 years old, if the president of the republic is that kind of a president that moves around the nation to check the roads, you find that the funds that are located for those roads to be constructed would be constructed. But the president is already tired. We cannot be talking of voting a president that is tired, that cannot go all through the regions to look at the state of the road. Those he sends to look at the state of those roads, come back and only tell him that the roads are fine. It is when the president wants to visit maybe the northwest region.
Yes, there is need for proper follow-up, and that is what the CRM is going to be
doing. That's proper follow-up. When it is when the president wants to go to visit Bamenda, you see overnight, a week. Now, another thing that disturbs me is we are on a campaign period. You look at security officers, gendarmes, and all the like are sent on mission to guard the president in the north using the state money. Whereas you get the candidate of the Pius. His car is burnt.
I give that opportunity for you to talk about the security of candidates. I give the opportunity for you to talk about the security of candidates during the electoral period.
I want to come back. You know, when we focus certain things at times, you need to come back to talk about them.
Okay, certainly. You have the floor.
And now you have a lot of time.
I have a lot of time. Thank you, my brother. That's why I'm saying that We cannot be supporting such a candidate that during the period of election, we use state money that ought to be used to do other things to send office soldiers on mission. Hundreds of soldiers bonded and taken to the northern regions, disrupt campaigns of other political parties from taking place in the northern regions, mobilize governors and other like, sub-divisional officers and other like to rally behind, whereas it's not done. Meanwhile, these people during presidential campaigns or campaigns or other elections, they are supposed to be neutral. We use them, and at the end they'll tell you that like this, other parties are weak, they are not doing this and not the like. Those are things which Cameroonians should understand that like this. We're in the 20th.
So to you, even government ministers are not supposed to be on the field campaigning on behalf of the CPDM.
They are the people's ministers. That's why we say these people, immediately appointed as a minister, you are supposed to be apolitical. That is exactly, let me tell you something. If you look at the case of the Northwest and Southwest region, those guys that they send, the police officers that are there, the gendarmes that are there, it's not because they have not received a formal drill. They have received quality training quite well, but the criteria for recruitment, during the time of Ayujo, before you were recruited, there was a kind of a moral censor. They investigate your background to see whether this man is his family having kleptomaniacs and other like. When you take rebels and you send them to the Northwest and Southwest region, thieves who have received formal training as soldiers, what do they go? They go there and then they try a means to operate and kill the people. So we come back to the question. I just told you that our roads are bad because there is no effective follow-up to see whether the funds that are allocated for their repairs, for construction and all the like, the roads are being constructed, all the like. Contracts are awarded, people take money, put in their pocket. The head of state send people on mission to go and investigate, to come, reports are given to him, roads are...
So what are you going to do? What is the CRM going to do?
The CRM...
To ensure that the roads are constructed and given to the right contractors, there's effective follow-up.
He has simply said it that this will have to do with a special commission put in place with an independent judiciary that will prosecute these people immediately as you do something. If I award a contract to construct a road and then you embezzle the money, your case comes to your case is taken to the court. The president of the republic will not call and say, no, please don't follow this case. It has to do with effective separation of power, because most of the things that are happening in this country, that roads are bad, they are not constructed alike, because everything is centered on one man. It is one man that decides when elections will have to hold at his own discretion. It's one man that decides when schools will have to start, or this and other like. When things are centralized on one man, you find that the country is bound to
Mr. Bruno Lombo, just to find out from you before we get to talk about a corruption and opposition coalition in Cameroon, what is the People's Political Party going to be doing to solve the problem of bad roads in Cameroon? What is going to be your priority?
Earlier on what I said, I actually made a statement on how we're going to bring our roads in the good state. You know that in Cameroon today we have something like 80,000 kilometers of roads, and yet only 5,000 of them are tarred. I talked about the public-private partnership, which will enable us construct the roads, say to the private sector, to those who have the means, come and construct the road, and this is the contract we are going to put in place in order for both parties to gain from what they have invested in the construction of the road. That's one thing. Earlier on, I heard the barrister of CPGM talking about the macro level of our economy. But I want us to come back to the fundamentals. Who are those to benefit from all these changes, from all what is done? Is the population. So we cannot just talk about the macro level without even saying something about those who are suffering on the field, on the ground. It's very important to come back to that. To say that today, more than 63% of the population do not have access to potable water. So what are we talking about macro level? Today, more than 50% of the population don't have access to electricity.
What are you going to do to solve these problems? Because time is against us.
I was coming to that. Now, for the problem of electricity, that's why we opted for decentralization. Why? Because we are going to enable all the decentralized localities to develop their own dams. You know that Cameroon is one of the countries in the world that has a lot of rivers. and you know that all the names of our divisions almost are names of rivers in Cameroon. So we have the potential actually to have 52 small dams in each division in Cameroon. That's what Serge Espamatomba
But
is
that
saying.
will entail a lot of money to develop those dams to make it possible for them to
If
produce
the
electricity.
decentralization process goes on, there are actually technologies to develop dams that could provide electricity for a group. So it's not that it's not talking about big means, because you know, in Cameroon, all the electricity that is produced actually is not really produced only for big companies. There's one major company that takes more than 50% of the electricity production in Cameroon nowadays. So what we are saying is that we should, as we are looking forward for industrialization, diversify the production of energy by enabling those localities to develop their own dams. We are not only talking about dams, we are talking about diversifying even the how to get the energy. We have the solar energy. Actually, in Cameroon, in the north, we have 12 at about 10 months over 12 of sun. We can actually develop solar energy. Even there, we have the wind. There are too many possibilities. Cameroon has a potential. You know, Cameroon is Africa in miniature.
Since time is against us,
Yeah.
we would want to know if the Serge Espamatomba of the United People for Social Renovation is elected on the 7th of October 2018,
be.
what are you going to do immediately you get into office? Just briefly before we go.
Immediately as we get into office, we need to see clear on the state organization. That's why we have some reforms that we are going to implement as we get to power. Yeah. So the first thing to do is to say that the constitution, within the 100 first days, we are going to implement a general discussion on the institution, because we need to have an institution that is not violable. We don't need people to, as they wake up in the morning, they would like to change everything in the constitution. We want the constitution to be stable for long as 100 years. So that's
going to be the priority,
Yeah, the
of
priority.
the Peace Party if you are elected. Barrister Atanga Mbambole, if Honorable Joshua Osi is elected on the 7th of October 2018, what is going to be the priority for the flag bearer of the SDF party?
The priority is the unity of our country, the two regions and the far north, with all the troubles that we have. That is why he says within the first 100 days, this problem must be solved. And he already said how he would do it, bringing the military back into the barracks, having a genuine dialogue with all the leaders of these movements wherever they are, granting them amnesty to come back to the country for those who are far away, and then reconciliation and reparation for those who've suffered damages. And that he is the best person in Cameroon among the 9 candidates who can do this, because he lives this problem ever since he was born, and he stands a greater chance of being listened to by his own people, because they will have no need to come ask for whatever thing, independence or what, because they have their son in power, and they can only but ask their son, why did you not help us? This happens in our traditional environments, where when villages are fighting, the fawn gets married to a woman from the adversary village, and whenever he's going, he puts the child born of that woman as the king, and then there is no problem.
But the call for coalition has been general. What is the stance of the Social Democratic Front?
When it comes to
Would
the
there be
coalition,
surprises at the diamond it?
there may be, but I don't like to live in ideals. All of us will have ideals, but we don't live in our ideals. We don't attain them, but we still live. I think Cameroonians have been derailed a lot to leave what is important and chase the shadow. What is important is for every Cameroonian to find himself in the process and participate. That is what is important. If all Cameroonians of voting age were to participate, we will solve all these problems of electoral fraud, because there's no electoral fraud which we will not surmount. We will solve this problem of coalition, because 8 people cannot hold us hostage. If 8 people hold us hostage, means we are the weaker part of it. So I emphasize on Cameroonians doing their own part of the bargain, participating in a process which is first and foremost for them. We need to understand that we'll go to elections for ourselves, not for any particular leaders. And it is the right of these leaders.
When you talk
of, it is the right.
When you talk of
the right of
eight party, when you talk of eight party refusing to hold a coalition, I want to tell you, Barrister, to tell me the number of the members of different political parties that
we are not
struggling to hold a coalition because
you see
of the Cameroon Renaissance movement.
We are in this
Renaissance movement.
We are in this for long.
Doing everything possible.
Maybe I thought I had the floor.
That's why
I thought I had the floor.
No,
we are not coming up.
Concluding very soon.
We are not coming up to list people who are supporting us or parties which are supporting.
No, we are talking of parties.
We are talking to Cameroonians.
Just 1 minute.
When you have the floor, you list the number of people supporting you. We are talking to Cameroonians who are supporting us, and we are into this business more than you people. At least twice the number of years that you've been into it. And we know what is important at every juncture. We know what is important, and I will not talk like some people who have the force of experience. We have the strength of the diversity, and we are capitalizing on it, and we know what we are doing. And we know fully well that there is no way some of the people who are in the race cannot bow, which is their right. So we are talking to Cameroonians to understand why people cannot bow, and that Cameroonians should know that if some people cannot bow to others, Cameroonians have the key in their hands, and they know what to do on October 7th. So that is why we are saying that on October 7th, this is the best candidate, Joshua Osei, to solve, first of all, the Anglophone problem, to solve the problems of Cameroon through federalism, because we are going to put in a federalism wherein everybody will participate, wherein every state will have its own responsibilities, and all the federal government will do, apart from keeping sovereign areas will be to check and see how these are functioning. Some people have not been courageous enough to tell us whether they want decentralization or federalism, but we've come out to tell Cameroonians that we want a 10-state federalism with all the powers.
Now, Barrister, just final words from you on behalf of your candidate, President Paul Biya, the incumbent, who is going in for the 7th term in office. He wants to rule Cameroon for 7 more years. What would you tell Cameroonians so that they should vote for him on the 7th of October 2018? What is your final word?
The first thing is that if you notice all what has been said about federalism and decentralization, the other speakers are just barely talking about taking new wine to put in an old calabash. Let me tell you something about politics. President Paul Biya has 9/10 of the Senate. He has 3/4 of the National Assembly. He has 9/10 of the councils. So everything being equal, nobody can rule this country better than him. Because there's no president apart of him who can stand and decide on something.
But he's not, he doesn't own the population, because at this juncture,
we're talking about realistic politics here.
They are the population.
Everything that the president can decide can be kicked against by the Senate or the National Assembly. If you don't know that. Everything. And you should understand that decentralization is the thing of the councils. CPDM has 9/10 of them. What do you expect? So if you have to be realistic, because you don't go to politics to lose, join the winning camp. Join this guy. This is the only guy who's fit to rule this country nowadays.
So Mutaga Sivanos Tifu, final words from you.
Yes, Mimi, thank you so much.
Professor Maurice Kamto is elected on the 7th of October. What would be the priority of your candidate?
The priority of my candidate, first of all, is he said it, that he will go to the northwest and southwest region. He will go to Nigeria, tell our brothers and sisters who are there that they are Cameroonians. He knows their grievances, that they are there because they have been tortured by a bloody system, a bloody regime. He is their brother. He fought for Bakassi, and that is why Bakassi remains the land of Cameroon. And then to come to those who have been talking that the Cameroon Renaissance movement is not willing for a coalition, I will tell you that I'm a practical example. I love from Padek. We joined the Cameroon Renaissance movement, dynamic of Abel Longa. We have Christian Penda Ikoka, That was with he was technical advisor to the President of the Republic. We have Paul Eric Kinge, we have Andre Blaise Esama, we have Vasero, we have other guys, civil societies and other like. You see that Professor Maurice Kamto is willing for a coalition, and if you see many of these
coalition
guys,
that he's leading,
they call it natural
coalition that he's at the helm.
Yes, Mimi, please, before you round up, I want to tell you that there is a difference between a natural coalition and a political coalition. A natural coalition is a coalition that is made by the genuine will of the people, even if their leaders refuse. That's why you see militants of other political parties running for the 2018 presidential elections are following Professor Maurice Kamto. To round it up, this is the ballot paper of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. This ballot paper stands for what? It tells you red card to the CPDM regime, and that what they call
you score your penalty.
What they call red card. What they call red card to the Cameroon Renaissance to the CPDM, and that Professor Maurice Kamto is the man that will kick the penalty and score come October 7, 2018. He says it that he is going to be the president of the whole Cameroon, and that militants of the CPDM are free to join him, to vote for him come October 7, because when he shall be the president of this nation, he is not going to cast out Mr. Abia and throw him into the dungeon as the CPDM militants have been afraid that when he takes over, he's going to kill Mr. Abia and all the like. Mr. Abia has ruled this country.
He's going to protect him.
He's going to protect him, and that they should
Mr.
vote for him.
Lumbo, maybe you have final words. Just 1 minute before.
Yeah, 1 minute. 1 minute. I'll just say, time has come to set the pace, really, because we are actually going for the presidential elections. And all the Cameroonians know that they have their fate into their hands. So you should make the good decision. Serge Espoir Matomba is the alternative for a new Cameroon. Vote Serge Espoir Matomba on the 7th of October.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bruno Lumbo of the United People for Social Renovation, the Pews Party. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on ETOUDI 2018. Sir Mutaga Sivanos Tifo of the CRM, former Vice President of PADEC Party. Good evening. Thank you so much once again for joining us tonight.
And thanks to Professor Maurice Kamto, who is presently in a Bolova, that will be coming back again for a return campaign in Douala.
We certainly hope to have him here.
Over 70,000.
We certainly hope to have him
are
here
expected.
on ETOUDI 2018. Barrister Atanga Mbambole.
Thank
you so much of the Social Democratic Front. Thank you so much for your time.
We call on Cameroonians to take their destiny into their hands. They should not be frightened by the figures given by the CPDM. Those are figures planned to explain or to justify their tactics that we all know. We are bent on arresting these tactics this time around, and Cameroonians are up to it.
Barrister Julius Ashu,
thank you, Mimi,
for being part of ETOUDI 2018.
I have not talked about any other party. I have not called any other name. But here, CPDM has always been the name of everybody, which is the rassemblement, which is the bringing together. But you see, politics is a game of wits. We don't have enemies.
They have the
we are friends. Experiences. My friend left PADEC and joined CRM. Soon he will start.
That is you have the experience, but there's no more force.
But
the
as
force
I
is gone.
Thank
the experience is there, the force is gone.
For joining us tonight in this edition of ETOUDI 2018, the first in English language. Viewers, we thank you so much for joining us. Gentlemen, we thank you so much as well, and representatives of the various political parties vying for post of president come the 7th of October 2018. Until we meet again, goodbye.